Hi, I'm Jerry Meints.
And I'm Deborah Meints, and welcome to It's a Family Affair. And today we're here to talk about love tools. And Jerry, what is a love tool?
Well, Love Tools, Deb, is the title of our new book, Love Tools for Everyday Heroes. And one of the most important themes of the book is that we challenge couples to raise their relationship to mythic levels, to really try to become everyday heroes in an effort to, create the best possible marriage and family environment for them and their loved ones.
You got it.
All right, Deb. The interesting thing about, romantic love in Western society, and we need to focus on how different our culture is compared to most cultures on this planet. Your marriage has not been arranged for you by your parents, typically, although they may have had something to say. It wasn't chosen for you at age 6 or 8 or 10. Instead, we have this, interesting opportunity in Western society to experience romantic love. And the interesting thing, I think, is that it's a fantasy. Boy meets girl.
Hormones meet hormones.
That's right. And boy projects the fantasy of the perfect female onto this blank screen he doesn't even know. And of course, the girl's doing the same thing. She has this fantasy of, Fabio or Mr. Wonderful or Mr. Goodbar, and she projects it onto this blank screen that she doesn't really know. And they each fall in love with each other, or they fall into fantasy land, or they fall into lust, which is even worse.
Well, it's okay, but don't let that be your first marital partner choice. The lust decision is not always the greatest decision.
Yeah, and that's really because fantasy wears thin after a while, and the reality of real life shines through, and people are pretty quickly disillusioned
after about 3 months.
After the honeymoon's over.
Yeah, and usually within 3 to 6 months, you're starting to see the cracks. You're starting to see how this person that you've projected all this perfection on is not perfect, and you feel really let down, and you're basically alone with yourself all over again, except you're angry at that person about it. And that's what happens during the reality stage, is you come back to yourself, because the fantasy of love is you found somebody and you never have to worry about anything again. You're on an incredible high, and you're floating along in that high, and it feels so good, but it's like a bad acid trip when it's over. You just come crashing down, and you don't know how to deal with reality. You don't know how to deal with that person who happens to disagree with you. And no matter how good the fantasy is, I don't care how much in love you are, give it 3 to 6 months. If you live on separate coasts, you might last a year in the fantasy stage. But it's going to come to the end, and you're going to be alone with yourself, seeing the cracks in their armor.
So one of the metaphors we suggested in our new book is the idea that instead of beginning a relationship on the top of a mountain where you have nowhere to go but down, you might very well start a relationship at the bottom of the mountain where there's a friendship, an enduring caring about one another, a learning about each other that doesn't involve fantasy and projection.
Well, that's what happens in these arranged marriages. The parents figure out what would work best. We're not suggesting this, by the way. But I mean, it could. The children grow up together in the village as friends, and they see each other more as souls who are going to work together for the community, and they get to know each other as friends. So there's not all this drama. There's not all this projection going on. This is a fellow human being who eats, sleeps, and goes to the bathroom, and has some good qualities, and you build on those good qualities. So bringing a little of that idea into the mix is really, really important. That you need a friendship.
Yeah, and where you might find that kind of relationship is, go to church, go to college, go to real life.
Well, do things that you naturally would enjoy.
Exactly.
That are good for you, that are intellectually expanding, that are emotionally expanding, that are socially expanding, that really explore who you are and your interests, because you're much more likely to meet somebody who's compatible with you in a more wholesome way than if you're just going, to Bananas to hang out.
Right, so stay out of
everybody's looking basically for tail. That's
right.
It.
Stay out of the bars.
You want them to notice your head, not just your tail.
Stay out of the bars, the clubs, and the discos.
It's just the odds are everybody's looking. It's just hormone hunting.
That's it. Well, one of the more interesting books, published over the last 15 years or so, is a book by Scott Peck, The Road Less Traveled. It's a powerful, psychologically, spiritually oriented book that's kind of one of those resources you always want to have on your library shelf, because he has a very different and a very uplifting concept of love. And in his book, The Road Less Traveled, the metaphor there is this is the path most people don't travel because they're too busy, in the discos and the bars and the clubs looking for love in all the wrong places.
Everybody wants to stay high.
Yeah.
And he's not saying in the book that you aren't going to get high. Everybody, you're going to fall in love and you're going to feel really, really groovy and cool and hip slick and everything. Then there's going to come reality, and he talks about what do you do then?
Right.
And this book gives you a clue, and this is what most people don't understand. The next stage of the journey requires courage and discipline, because it's going to require of you that you learn to love in spite of yourself.
You're right. And let me quote Peck's definition of love. He says, it is the work necessary to add to your own and your mate's emotional and spiritual growth.
Right.
Now think about that for a moment. That's very, very far from, the pink cloud falls high. And because it is in fact work, it's a carrying of a relationship. And one of the metaphors we use is, a marriage is like, him and her picking up a 40-foot telephone pole. She gets one end, he gets the other, and they pick it up and they carry it, and all of a sudden the synergy they create together makes that telephone pole not heavy at all. However, if one mate drops the telephone pole, you'll notice how heavy your end can get. And it's a real drag, literally, to carry the relationship when you don't have that mate who's there for you, holding out the trust, the caring, the love, and the support.
Putting energy into it.
Yeah.
And this is where we get the codependent relationship, where a person projects that they need to have this person in their life who's dropped their end, and they're dragging it, and they're getting more and more exhausted. And the person who's not carrying their weight is saying, oh, I really need you to carry my energy. And if you are raised in a home where you were used to being the caregiver, it's real easy to go into a marriage where you mistake love for caregiving. In a real marriage, you have a teammate who's helping you along. They may be doing a different part of the task, but they're certainly carrying their share.
That the word you said, task, is really important, because we naturally think of love as a soulmate connection, but it's also a taskmate connection.
Right, there's a lot of stuff to do. There's a lot of maintenance on relationship.
The home and life and work and careers, but kids, and kids are an awesome and significantly important responsibility that, we need a mama bear and a papa bear to carry those baby bears through life and to teach them the lessons they need and help them with the tools they need to acquire to navigate their life as they evolve.
Right, and I know some of you are watching this and you're single parents, and you're saying, I really get what they're saying. I married somebody, or I got pregnant, and this person ditched me. And it's really hard for you to be both mom and dad to your kids. Ideally, you'd have a male energy there or female energy there to help you with this. So this is a prevention show, and for the rest of you that are parenting by yourselves, God bless you. And hopefully you have a support community that's helping you carry the weight of family and helping you in your church, your social group, or your friendship network, or in your extended family that's helping you, because it does take a lot of your energy.
That's really neat, Deb. And I want to bless another category of people out there, and those are the step parents.
Right.
God bless you, because step parenting is one of the most noble tasks on the planet, one of the most difficult and sometimes the most thankless, but nonetheless, when you team up with someone who is a single parent and become that step parent in the lives of those children, that's an awesome undertaking. God bless you. Deb, I want to point out at this moment the 4 cornerstones.
Good.
And this is a test. Listen, get your pencils and papers out. If you have these 4 cornerstones in your relationship.
If you've given it at least 3 to 6 months.
Okay, right. Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, don't evaluate after a week or so. But if you have these 4 cornerstones, then you have the foundation upon which you can build a successful marriage and family. If you don't, your house is going to slide off into the ocean. So let's take the first of the 4 cornerstones, and that is intellectual compatibility.
Right.
What do you mean, Deb?
Well, intellectual compatibility is that the person gets you, understands what you're talking about. I mean, they may be very hot and sexual and exciting and all that stuff, but do they have a mind that's compatible with your mind? Do they understand the way you think? Can they keep up with you? Do they get your jokes?
Right.
This is so important. This is going to get you through the long haul if this person can keep up with you intellectually and understands your type of intellect.
Yeah, if she can't finish your sentence, this sentence, you're in trouble, and that is, John, Paul, George, and...
Well, that's also if you have like a 20-year age gap.
Yeah, which is not the healthiest of situations on the planet.
Right.
It's almost, you know...
It's lonely.
Well, it is lonely.
Sometimes there's an intellectual gap.
We have a father and a daughter,
right,
instead of peers.
If you remember World War II and your bride is, you know, Gulf War, you're going to be a little bit lonely there, even though they may be bright. It's tough to be compatible.
There it is. All right. The second cornerstone, and some say this is the most important, but it's just one of the four, and that is sexual compatibility.
Right.
You got to have some chemistry here, guys, or it's not going anywhere.
Right, and we're rating this on a 1 to 10 scale. We want you above 7 on all of these.
Right.
And that's how strong your cornerstone needs to be.
Yes.
That means there needs to be chemistry. You can't be grossed out. You have to be attracted to. It's just really important. I mean, you can really get each other's jokes, but if you don't like the way the person smells, or they really turn you off, or if they've got a lot of money and you think they're going to get you through on it, it's not going to work. We see you in our office all the time. There has to be sexual chemistry.
There it is. All right, Deb. The third, and this is very significant, and that is moral match.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know, I had a couple, and he was a Christian, a very strong Christian, and he had married an atheist on the idea that he was going to convert her. And I'll tell you, it was water and oil. The two never really mixed, and his ability to bring her around only incited a lot of conflict.
Right, and the other part of moral match is, you know, in the beginning, everybody's trying to impress everybody. You want to look around and see, what do their friends think of them? What are their... I've seen a lady who, the man she married doesn't have any friends. He has no connection with his family. He was being really good to her, but everybody else had just ducked and covered because he was so cruel and unkind, and now it's coming back to her.
Right, it was a preview of coming attraction, so
right. Why had he alienated everyone else in his life?
Because morality is just not about the spiritual or religious choices we make, but it's also about how we live our lives, how we treat people, whether we're kind or cruel, or whether we're responsible or uncaring. So, significantly important third cornerstone. And now, Deb, the fourth and final cornerstone is future plans.
This is really important, because it's so sad when this isn't examined, because you can have all the other three, the intellectual and the sexual and the moral, but if you want to live on the West Coast and she wants to live on the East Coast, if you want 5 kids and she doesn't want any, if you want to be upper middle class and she wants to, you know, work minimum wage, you're going to fight so much about this. Your future plans need to be compatible. They don't have to be identical, but they have to be compatible. Really talk about this. It may break your heart, but if someone really doesn't want to have kids and they just say, no way, that's going to be a real struggle in the marriage. If you think you're going to marry them and talk them into it, it's just going to be a struggle. I do know couples that get over that hurdle and they find out they did want that baby, but please talk about it ahead of time.
There it is.
Yeah.
All right, Deb. Well, we've covered the 4 cornerstones. I hope you've taken notes and evaluated how strong each of those cornerstones is in your relationship. And we're going to be back to talk about warriorhood and the ambivalence merry-go-round. And we're going to give men some really important tips right after this important message.
Okay.
When a man loves a woman, can't keep his mind on nothing else. He changed the world for the good thing he's found.
I think you should wear a tie.
Dad, nobody wears ties to school.
Tie says you're serious. It'll make a good impression. And remember, you're there to study,
to learn, and to make something of myself. I got it.
Almost half of all UNCF students are the first in their family to go to college.
They have some great architecture classes.
Dad, I'm not really interested in architecture.
Well, keep your options open. And remember, No girls until your
my
work is done. And I'd make sure that I got my lunch.
Dad, you're not going. I am.
I know.
Listen, we better get going. Don't want to be late the first day, you know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And when you're the first to go, you're going for a lot of people. The United Negro College Fund. A mind is a terrible thing to waste.
When a man loves a woman, can't keep his mind on nothing else. He changed the world for the good thing he's found.
Hi, I'm Jerry Meints.
And I'm Deborah Meints. Welcome back to It's a Family Affair. And we're going to talk about merry-go-rounds.
Okay. Well, you know, our show today is Love Tools, and that's the title of our newest book, Love Tools for Everyday Heroes. It's a good book, and it teaches couples the tools they need to create, a loving marriage and a healthy family. And we had an opportunity during the first segment to take a look at the fantasy land of boy meets girl, and how instead to begin a relationship from a friendship basis and allow that friendship to become the foundation upon which love can grow.
And allow courtship. I just want to say this to younger people. There's this old-fashioned word, it's called courtship. It means you hang out with the other person and you enjoy dating them and you go slow. It's at a nice leisurely pace, because a lot of the young girls I see are just feeling so rushed into immediate commitment. You don't have to do that.
No.
You can share and check and find out who you're dating and see if you like them, and you both can have some open pasture for a while and enjoy, the playing field a little bit, and then come closer and see if you really like that person's qualities. That's courtship. And go slow. It's okay to go. You don't have to be rushed.
Good advice, babe.
Yeah.
You know, we also gave you in the first segment the 4 cornerstones for the foundation of a marriage: intellectual compatibility, sexual compatibility, moral match, and future plans.
Right.
And during this segment, you alluded to the merry-go-round. This is what happens to most people after the honeymoon is over. They start to experience ambivalence. And let me define that term, Deb, because it's a 35-cent word that means roughly part of me wants the relationship and part of me doesn't. Part of me wants to stay and part of me wants to run. And the truth is about ambivalence is that it's an invariant structure of reality, meaning we're ambivalent about almost everything.
Right. Well, after you come off the complete certainty that this is the love of your life and you're just hot to trot, you're just amazingly caught up in it, then comes the first argument, the time that you see that the person's energy's down a little bit. And it's kind of like, well, I don't know if I like that. And then as you get deeper into the reality stage, it's like, well, I thought I was supposed to be happy all the time. I thought I was supposed to feel good all the time. And I just have to quote, an article I saw in the Desert Sun, which I know is true. It's a study, a big, big German study, but it said, that married people are not happier than unmarried people, that you're about as happy as you make up your mind to be.
Yeah.
And so this big expectation, if you're an unhappy and depressed downer of a person, a swamp thing, that you're going to meet some upper and then feel really good, well, you will for about 10 minutes, and you got to go back to being you.
Right.
And then you're going to feel ambivalent about the other guy. Wake up.
There it is.
That's your ambivalence.
And that's because happiness is an inside job.
Right.
And it's a decision. And it involves, like love, like Scott Peck talked about earlier, responsibility and courage.
So many people are caught in the high, going from, you can do this, to your ears fall off. You go from one person to the next person, and you'll stay in that fantasy, juvenile, immature, puer place where you don't grow up. You can do it, you'll get pathetic around the age of 50, you'll be sad and sorry, but you can do it for a while. You can probably do it even if you put a little alcohol with it, you probably do it till you're 75, but we're trying to talk to people who want to grow and be healthier. Yeah, you're going to have to face yourself. You have to face your ambivalence.
Yes, Deb, and what health really is growth into higher conscious spiritual awareness.
Right on.
So that your love relationship is connected to the spiritual components of who you are as well.
Yeah.
Now, back to the ambivalence merry-go-round, and let's see if this fits any of you out there. You're real happy in the relationship and you really feel like you want to stay, and then you know, he does something that's so mean or thoughtless, and the merry-go-round spins you over here, and you're out of it. You're spending your time thinking about what life is going to be when you meet Fabio or Mr. Wonderful or somebody else. And you begin to really start to become preoccupied with the idea of leaving the relationship until all of a sudden, oh, he does something that's so nice or kind, and you spin back over here to the part of you that wants in the relationship. Well, if you can relate to that, you may be just new to the ambivalence merry-go-round, and it is in fact dizzyfying. It's very confusing. It's a vicious cycle in addition, because it's going to continue on and on and on. Mm-hmm. It's also really a self-torture game, and it creates self-doubt, and it begins to split one's identity, because here's what happens, and a lot of times, in fact, this is really one of the roots of infidelity, is that, and let's say in this case, he, you know, is spun over here and he's thinking about being out of the relationship, and he does that often enough to the place where he starts to act out on the negative half of his ambivalence. He starts to flirt, intrigue, and develop, you know, friendships that are a little too friendly outside of the marriage, maybe in the work setting or somewhere out socially. And
or on the internet.
Yeah, on the internet, the fastest growing form of cheating and infidelity and sexual addiction. And he starts to get a high there. And it's a much groovier high, because he's projecting his fantasy once again onto this person he doesn't even know than his experience is with his mate. So now he takes that next step, because he's feeding his ambivalence, the negative side of his ambivalence grows, and he now acts out, crosses that line, has an affair, and now the craziness really sets in. So I want to just ask you out there to examine whether or not you're caught up in the ambivalence merry-go-round. If you are, it's a spiritual trap, it's a dead end, and it will drag your energy down and poison the work you need to do in love and marriage.
It's like, what's something someone can do when they're really feeling in the negative side of their ambivalence merry-go-round? How can they address it? Do they address it with their mate? How do they address it, Jared?
Well, we teach men in our men's groups, and we have a book called Men's Tools, and we teach men that warriors, and that's what we want men to aspire to become, that is, peaceful warriors. Warriors do not indulge in ambivalence. They recognize ambivalence as an invariant structure, but they refuse to act out on it. They refuse to feed it. They'll notice, oh yeah, I see there are other women out there, but I haven't got time for the pain, or I choose not to become involved or unfaithful. And instead, a warrior puts his energy back into working on the marriage and the relationship, which might mean they need to go to some counseling, or they need to go talk to their pastor, or they need to sit down or have a long weekend or a getaway or a retreat to, you know, spark that fire, to keep that fire burning.
Instead of the resentment fire.
Exactly.
Because what feeds the ambivalence merry-go-round is that resentment cycle.
Yes.
And then there's all these justifications for acting out. So, you know, with 12-step program, people are asked to examine their resentment as their problem.
Right.
Look in the mirror if you're resenting. You've been carrying this resentment around since before you met this person. You can't get yourself out of first gear. You don't know how to communicate your needs. You don't know how to be tender. You don't know how to explore your creativity. You don't know how to live your life. And now you're mad at this person because they didn't do it for you. Well, look in the mirror, because the spiritual work of life is learning how to do this for ourselves.
You bet it is. And you know, Deb, that word indulge, I want to just underscore. Indulging is something warriors don't do. And so
and they take
the high road.
Responsibility for
there
it if
is.
they do it.
Take the high road, take responsibility, and do the hard work of love to create the kind of marriage and family that is possible. Well, Deb, we've got 8 tips for men, and I want to nail these down if we can.
Okay.
I'll take the first one, you take the second.
Okay.
All right, gentlemen, and we're addressing the men because men have a harder time in marriage. Women seem to be gifted with, you know, more love and compassion and more empathy and caring than most men, not always, but as a general rule. So it's men that really need to be uplifted and need the mentoring to become, you know, better men, better husbands, and better fathers. So men, number 1 tip, offer to help her more.
That means like with the kids and stuff like that.
There it is.
Okay.
Number 2. Okay.
Look at her when she's speaking.
Okay.
It means
Real
a lot
important.
to get that energy passed back and forth, not just at the television set.
All right. And you know, number 3, gentlemen, tell her when she's hurting you, and take a time out if it's feeling toxic and it's starting to escalate. Use your talk tools.
Right on.
Number 4, Deb.
Before I turn the page. Confront her if she's angry at your vulnerability. Women sometimes have a hard time realizing that men have feelings too. And you need to confront her about that. And you as a man need to be appreciated, and you need to let your wife know that. And I start a lot of couples out this way. They have to express what they appreciate before they get into the stuff, like what you did this week that I appreciate.
Before they get into the negative
The
and what's
negative
wrong.
stuff.
That's great.
Just to notice the details.
All right,
Yeah.
Deb. And gentlemen, number 5, tell her interesting stories. I mean, we know women are natural storytellers, and that's wonderful, but share a little of your background and your childhood and your reality.
Right on.
Number 6, Deb.
And listen to her stories. Women do talk more, and try to look interested. I mean, just practice looking interested. Say things like, yeah, wow, cool.
And gentlemen, if you haven't got a clue about how to do that, look back at one of our most popular shows a couple of months ago, and that's Magic Mirroring. That program teaches men how to listen. All right, number 7, let her open you up emotionally and spiritually. And finally, Deb?
Okay, and bless her with your gift of focus, which really, the feminine energy can be a little scattered and go all over the place. Women do that conversationally. Men are able to bring women back into focus. If she's saying, I hate you and I want out of the marriage, your job is to say, I hear you're in pain, I love you, I'm committed to you. You hold on to the reins, don't let her go. She's here to bless your life.
There it is. I'm Jerry Meints.
And I'm Deborah Meints, and it's been a family affair.